Compassion is a skill, not an accident, because nothing in the human emotional system grows without deliberate practice. We like to imagine that kindness is something that comes naturally to good people, and cruelty is something that comes naturally to bad people. But the truth becomes clearer the moment life places us in front of someone who once occupied space in our heart, especially when that person appears broken, vulnerable, or lost. It is in those moments that we discover who we are, not who we pretend to be. To see someone we once loved at their lowest challenges every comfortable narrative we have built about ourselves. It strips away ego, rewrites memory, and forces us to look directly at the complexity of human dignity. Compassion becomes a choice, not a reflex, not an accident, not something instinctual. It becomes a behavioral decision informed by our emotional intelligence, our past wounds, our maturity, and our capacity to face discomfort without turning away. Compassion requires strength, because when you see an ex, someone who once knew your laugh, your fears, your habits, now sitting on the pavement, unshaven, exhausted, and hollow-eyed, your first reaction isn't compassion. It's shock, followed by confusion, followed by a rush of emotions you thought you buried long ago. And behind all of that, hidden like a whisper, sits fear. What if this could have been me? What if life can collapse this fast? That fear often pushes people into emotional distance. It is easier to pretend we don't see the suffering, easier to act like the person we once loved is now a stranger, easier to justify walking away by repeating stories like we aren't together anymore, their choices aren't my responsibility, our chapter is over, and life moves on. But emotional maturity interrupts these excuses. It asks deeper questions. If you can be kind, why would you choose not to be? If you can make someone's worst day less painful, why stay silent? If compassion costs you nothing but a moment of discomfort, why avoid it? When compassion is a skill, it is like a muscle. The more we practice it, the more naturally it flows. But practice often begins in the hardest moments, not the easiest ones. And there are few moments more emotionally complex than facing someone from our past when they are at rock bottom. Compassion in situations like these is not about rekindling a relationship or reopening old wounds. It is not about taking responsibility for someone else's entire life. It is about recognizing the humanity in someone who once shared time, space, emotion, and memories with you. It's about acknowledging that dignity is not something people earn. It is something they inherently possess, even when life has stripped them down to their most vulnerable state. When you choose compassion for an ex who is suffering, you're not validating the past, you're not erasing mistakes or rewriting history, you're not denying the pain they may have caused you or pretending that the breakup didn't matter. Instead, you're declaring something far more powerful. I am not controlled by bitterness. I am not shaped by resentment. I am not defined by the past. I am choosing the person I want to be today, regardless of who I used to be. There is a profound emotional discipline in that choice, because compassion asks you to confront contradictions. You might remember how this person hurt you, maybe through betrayal, neglect, or emotional distance. You might remember the arguments, the breakdowns, the disappointments. Yet here they are, stripped of all defenses, all ego, all illusions. And suddenly your heart recognizes something your mind tried to forget. They are human. This realization does not excuse the past, but it recontextualizes the present. It invites you to act based on your values, not your wounds. And this is where compassion transforms from a passive feeling into an active skill. You learn to hold space for someone's suffering without having to invite them back into your life. You learn to see pain without internalizing it. You learn to support someone's dignity without compromising your boundaries. You learn to acknowledge someone's humanity without making their problems your own. Compassion is a skill because it requires emotional literacy. You must be able to name your feelings, sadness, shock, guilt, empathy, anger, or nostalgia. Only by identifying these emotions can you prevent them from hijacking your behavior. Emotional maturity means recognizing your triggers without letting them dictate your choices. When you see your ex suffering, old patterns might try to resurface, the instinct to fix them, save them, or fall back into familiar roles. But skillful compassion does not fall into these traps. It offers warmth, not entanglement, presence, not obligation, humanity, not sacrifice. Another reason compassion is a skill is because it demands interpretation rather than reaction. When someone from your past shares a truth that makes you cry, whether it's about their struggles, regrets, mental health, addiction, financial loss, or emotional collapse, your first impulse might be to judge or blame. Why didn't you ask for help earlier? Why did you let your life fall apart? Why didn't you try harder? These reactions are familiar because they protect us from facing vulnerability. Judgment creates distance. Compassion requires closeness. But closeness does not mean losing yourself. It means grounding yourself enough to stand near someone's suffering without being pulled into it. That grounding is what makes compassion healthy rather than self-destructive. You can offer food, shelter, advice, resources, or simply the dignity of being spoken to with respect, but you do not have to take responsibility for their entire life. This distinction is part of the skill. Compassion also teaches humility. It reminds us that the line between stability and collapse is thinner than we like to think. Life can change in an instant. Illness, job loss, grief, addiction, trauma. When you see someone you once loved living on the streets, humility whispers a truth too often ignored. We are all vulnerable, and that vulnerability connects us. It inspires gratitude for what we have and empathy for those who have fallen. Importantly, compassion does not erase boundaries. Healthy compassion respects the reality of the past. If your ex was abusive, manipulative, or unsafe, compassion might look like offering resources instead of direct contact. It might look like kindness at a distance. It might look like a sincere wish for their healing without reopening a door that was closed for your protection. Emotional maturity includes the wisdom to know the difference. But when the past was simply complicated, imperfect, or painful in ordinary human ways, compassion becomes an opportunity for repair, not repair of the relationship, but repair of your internal world. When you choose compassion, you release bitterness from your emotional vocabulary. You cleanse resentment from your system. You allow closure to become something organic rather than forced. You demonstrate to yourself that you can act from values rather than wounds. Compassion is also a signal of emotional evolution. When you can look at someone who broke your heart and say, "I will not abandon you in your suffering," you are doing something few people learn. Not everyone achieves this. Many carry bitterness for decades. They lock their hearts behind narratives like "they didn't deserve me, I owe them nothing," or "they made their choices." But bitterness is not strength. It is a shield made of fear. Compassion is strength because it requires vulnerability. You cannot offer compassion from a closed heart. You offer it from a heart that has healed enough to stay open without collapsing. You offer it from a mind that understands pain is universal, not personal. You offer it from a soul that recognizes human dignity, not history. You offer it from a place where kindness is not a reaction but a principle. And here lies the profound educational truth. Compassion is a skill that reflects the kind of person you are becoming. It is evidence of emotional growth, psychological literacy, and moral clarity. It shows that your empathy is intentional, not accidental. When you look at your ex living on the streets and choose to treat them with respect, even if you feel heartbreak, even if you feel anger, even if tears fall from your eyes, you are practicing one of the highest human abilities to respond to suffering with humanity rather than judgment. This skill changes your life. It affects your future relationships, your friendships, your parenting, your self-perception. People who practice compassion without expectation build deeper trust with others. They regulate their emotions better. They experience less resentment, less anger, and less emotional chaos. They create healthier relationships because they communicate from a place of grounded empathy. Compassion is also contagious. When people experience genuine compassion, they often begin offering it to others. Your decision to be kind can inspire someone else to treat the next person with dignity. This ripple effect contributes to a healthier, more humane world. Every act of compassion is a seed planted in the emotional landscape of society. Some seeds will sprout in places you may never see. When you practice compassion toward an ex at their lowest point, you aren't just helping them. You are training your own character. You are teaching yourself how to move through the world with integrity rather than reactivity. You are shaping your emotional identity. You are cultivating a mindset that strengthens you far beyond this single moment. Compassion also reveals maturity because it acknowledges the complexity of life. People are not defined by their worst moments. They are not defined by the chapter in which you knew them. Every person is a story in progress, not a finished sentence. When someone shares a painful truth with you, something that makes you cry because it reveals a depth of suffering you never imagined, compassion allows you to stand in the discomfort rather than escape it. This discomfort is educational. It teaches you that life requires constant emotional learning. Compassion is part of that curriculum. It teaches you how to navigate painful realities without collapsing under their weight. It teaches you how to offer kindness without losing your boundaries. It teaches you how to interpret suffering without judgment. It teaches you how to face vulnerability without shutting down. Compassion also heals your memory. We often look back on past relationships through the lens of pain, remembering what went wrong, what was lost, what ended badly. But when compassion enters the picture, memory softens. It becomes more balanced. You remember the humanity, not just the hurt. You remember the connection, not just the conflict. You remember that both of you were doing your best with the emotional tools you had at the time. This kind of remembrance does not rewrite history, but it reframes it, and reframing is essential for emotional peace, because memory can be a prison or a classroom, depending on whether we cling to resentment or embrace compassion. Compassion transforms the moment you see your ex on the streets from a tragedy into a lesson about impermanence, a lesson about humility, a lesson about choices, a lesson about emotional responsibility, a lesson about kindness, a lesson about who you are becoming. The truth they told you, the one that made you cry, becomes a catalyst. Your tears are not weakness, they are recognition. Recognition of pain, of complexity, of humanity, recognition of the silent truth that no one is immune from suffering, recognition that life is unpredictable, relationships are imperfect, and people are fragile. But recognition alone is not the lesson. The lesson is what you choose to do with that recognition. Do you run? Do you judge? Do you freeze? Or do you offer kindness, dignity, presence, or support? Compassion turns recognition into action. When you respond with compassion, you validate your own emotional evolution. You prove that you are not the same person you were during the relationship. You have grown, matured, expanded. You have developed emotional skills that allow you to navigate difficult situations without collapsing, attacking, or withdrawing. This skill does not just serve you in this moment, it serves you in every moment moving forward. It shapes how you treat strangers, friends, future partners, and even yourself. Because compassion toward others teaches you compassion toward yourself. When you soften your heart for someone else, you learn how to soften it for your own wounds. Compassion is a skill, not an accident. It is learned, practiced, tested, and refined, and life will continue to give you opportunities to strengthen it, not always through dramatic encounters, but through everyday interactions, listening without interrupting, understanding without assuming, helping without expecting, supporting without controlling. Every time you choose compassion, you choose growth. You choose humanity. You choose emotional strength. You choose the version of yourself that contributes positively to the world. And perhaps the deepest lesson is this: you cannot control who your ex became. You cannot control the choices they made. You cannot control the pain they experienced. But you can control who you are today, right now, in this moment. When life places you face to face with someone from your past in a moment of suffering, compassion asks, what kind of human do you want to be? Your answer to that question defines your character far more than the past ever could. Compassion is your response to the world, not a reaction to the past. It is an intentional choice to treat others with humanity, not because they are perfect, not because they deserve it, not because they asked for it, but because you have become the kind of person who knows how to offer it, and that is the essence of emotional maturity. Emotional healing begins with honest conversations, but most people misunderstand what honest truly means. They think it is simply about saying what is true, but genuine emotional honesty is far deeper. It requires safety, vulnerability, and the willingness to confront internal realities we often try to outrun. When two people sit together, whether they are lovers, strangers, or, as in your story, former partners, an invisible door opens. Behind that door is every unspoken emotion, every unanswered question, every suppressed memory, every unresolved wound. Most people never open that door. They fear what might come out. They fear that old pain will return, that blame will surface, or that they will be forced to feel something they believed they had already buried. But real healing does not come from avoidance. It comes from allowing those truths to finally breathe. An honest conversation is not simply an exchange of words. It is an exchange of emotional realities. It is the moment when two nervous systems, often strained, often defensive, often uncertain, slowly lower their guard. And once the guard is lowered, something remarkable happens. The truth that has been hiding inside the body begins to rise. People start to share the things they never said, not because they were lying, but because they were protecting themselves, or protecting the relationship, or protecting the illusion that everything was fine. It is astonishing how much pain the human heart can carry silently, simply because it did not feel safe enough to be spoken. Safety is the birthplace of honesty. Without it, the truth stays locked. When someone feels seen rather than judged, understood rather than dismissed, heard rather than silenced, their emotions come forward. In the story of finding an ex living on the streets, this dynamic becomes even more profound. There is shock, confusion, sorrow, and a sudden shift in power dynamics. The person who was once a partner is now fragile, exposed, humbled by circumstance. This shift can open a space where pretense becomes impossible. In such moments, people often share truths they kept hidden for years, not because they suddenly want to reveal them, but because hardship has stripped away every barrier that once kept those truths inside. When someone says, "I never told you this before, but," what follows is rarely just information. What follows is a piece of their humanity they didn't know how to offer earlier. Maybe they were ashamed. Maybe they were afraid of being misunderstood. Maybe they believed that speaking their truth would lead to rejection. Or maybe they weren't even honest with themselves at the time. Pain distorts understanding. Defensiveness distorts communication. But standing face to face with someone who once mattered, someone who now sees your vulnerability, has a way of loosening the emotional knots the past left behind. Honest conversations trigger emotional release because the human body cannot hold conflicting emotions forever. When someone speaks from the place of raw truth, their voice often trembles, their eyes soften, their posture changes, their breathing slows. This is not weakness, this is integration. It is the nervous system finally allowing itself to feel what it had been suppressing. Most people think emotional healing comes from answers, but in reality, it comes from the act of revealing. When you tell someone the truth, the real truth, not the rehearsed version, you are acknowledging your own humanity and your own wounds. That acknowledgement alone can be transformative. There is something deeply educational in the process. Pain becomes a teacher, vulnerability becomes a lesson, and honesty becomes the curriculum through which two people understand themselves better. The past, instead of being a chain, becomes a mirror. Every hidden fear, every miscommunication, every unresolved moment gains clarity, and clarity is the beginning of closure. Without clarity, people stay stuck replaying old scenes in their minds, rewriting what happened, questioning themselves, or blaming the other person. But when the truth is spoken out loud, clearly, gently, vulnerably, the mind finally receives something solid to hold on to. It no longer has to create theories. It no longer has to guess. It can rest. Honest conversations are also an emotional equalizer. They remind both people that behind all the mistakes, misunderstandings, or endings, there are two human beings simply trying to make sense of themselves. It becomes impossible to villainize someone when you hear their pain directly from their own mouth, even if their actions were harmful, even if the relationship ended painfully. Hearing the truth behind their behavior often awakens empathy. Not excuses, empathy. The difference is important. Excuses blur accountability. Empathy brings understanding, and understanding brings peace. Sometimes the truth someone shares has nothing to do with the relationship at all. It might be a childhood wound, a hidden addiction, a buried trauma, a period of depression they never admitted, or internal battles they didn't know how to articulate. When they finally speak these truths, it doesn't just heal the connection between two people. It begins to heal their relationship with themselves. Saying something out loud makes it real. And when something becomes real, it can be faced, worked on, forgiven, or released. For the listener, hearing such truths can be emotional, sometimes overwhelmingly so. Not because the truth itself is dramatic, but because it reveals how much depth existed beneath the surface all along. We often look back at past relationships and think we knew everything, but honesty in moments of vulnerability can reveal that we understood only a fraction of what the other person was carrying. This revelation can be heartbreaking, especially when the truth explains behaviors that once felt confusing, hurtful, or distant. But it can also be comforting, because it reminds us that many endings are not a failure of love, but a failure of communication, timing, or emotional readiness. Furthermore, honest conversations create space for forgiveness. Not the kind that dismisses wrongdoing, but the kind that understands it. Forgiveness is not about saying, "It's okay." It's about saying, "I see you clearly now." When people share their truth, they are essentially inviting you to look at the wound behind the behavior. And when that wound becomes visible, forgiveness becomes more possible. Even if reconciliation is not the goal, emotional release can occur. Closure is not forgetting, closure is understanding. In the educational sense, these moments teach us one of the most important lessons of emotional development. People rarely behave the way they do because of us. They behave the way they do because of their internal experiences. Honest conversations reveal those experiences. They shine light on the inner conflicts, fears, and insecurities that shaped someone's choices. When we hear these truths, we realize that their silence was never a lack of love, it was a lack of emotional freedom. And healing begins the moment truth and understanding meet. Even the tears that come, whether from sadness, relief, or compassion, are part of the healing process. Tears are the body's way of releasing emotions that were stuck, emotions that had no language, emotions that were waiting for a moment safe enough to be felt. When someone speaks their truth and the listener responds not with anger but with presence, the emotional landscape shifts. It transforms from confrontation to connection, from tension to honesty, from distance to acknowledgement. Honest conversations also help both people redefine themselves. The person sharing unburies parts of their identity that were hidden. The person listening expands their emotional capacity. These conversations enhance maturity, emotional intelligence, empathy, and self-awareness. They teach boundaries, communication, and the importance of timing. They reveal how essential psychological safety is for meaningful relationships. Not just romantic ones, but friendships, family connections, and even interactions with strangers. Most importantly, they remind both people that healing is not a destination. It's a process, a slow, patient, compassionate journey through the truths we avoided for too long. Every honest conversation is a step forward. Every shared truth is a weight lifted. Every moment of vulnerability is a door opened. And every tear shed in understanding is proof that the heart is still capable of feeling deeply. Healing begins when people stop pretending. It begins when they choose honesty over pride, vulnerability over silence, understanding over assumption. It begins when two people, even two people who once hurt each other, even two people who walk separate paths, meet again not as who they were, but as who they have become. In that moment, the past becomes less threatening, the present becomes clearer, and the future becomes lighter. Honest conversations are the bridge between pain and peace. They do not erase the story, but they allow it to be understood, and understanding is what finally lets the heart rest. Past relationships still influence our present emotional landscape. This is a truth that many of us either ignore or underestimate. Even if a relationship has ended years ago, its echoes linger in subtle ways that shape our current emotional world, the decisions we make, and the ways we connect with others. When someone from our past unexpectedly reappears, it triggers a series of reflections, memories, and emotions that can be both illuminating and challenging. The impact is rarely superficial. It is not simply about nostalgia or fleeting thoughts. It is about how prior emotional bonds have carved channels within our psyche, affecting our patterns, our fears, and our capacity for intimacy. When we encounter someone from our past, our first instinct may often be to measure ourselves against who we were when we were with them. We might ask ourselves questions we didn't realize were lingering in our minds. Have I grown enough? Am I more patient, more understanding, more compassionate than I was? Have I learned the lessons that relationship tried to teach me? These reflections are not coincidences. They are a reminder that emotional growth is not linear and that the human heart carries experiences in a cumulative way. Each interaction, each hurt, each joy has left traces that resurface when familiar faces appear. These moments are like mirrors held up not just to our past, but to our present selves, forcing an internal evaluation of our personal development and emotional maturity. Even if the past relationship ended on amicable terms, its influence remains. Relationships are ecosystems of emotional exchange, where patterns are established, roles are learned, and vulnerabilities are exposed. When we reconnect, even briefly, with someone from our past, these patterns may resurface, and with them, insights into unresolved dynamics. Perhaps there was a recurring disagreement that we never fully understood. Perhaps there were moments of connection that we underestimated. Re-encountering these dynamics allows us to examine how we react differently now, how our communication skills have evolved, and how our understanding of ourselves has deepened. It becomes a live lesson in emotional awareness, a chance to see how far we have traveled emotionally. For many people, revisiting a past relationship evokes both positive and negative emotions simultaneously. The positive emotions remind us of our capacity to love, to invest ourselves wholly, and to be vulnerable. They serve as proof of our human resilience and our ability to form meaningful bonds. The negative emotions, on the other hand, surface unresolved grief, regret, or disappointment. These emotions are not meant to punish us, they exist as part of the broader architecture of personal growth. By acknowledging these feelings, we honor the complexity of our emotional experiences, recognizing that growth involves integrating both joy and pain into our self-awareness. One critical aspect to understand is that these encounters provide an opportunity to reassess our boundaries and emotional priorities. When someone from the past re-enters our present, we are often forced to confront questions about how much we have healed and what we are willing to accept in our current lives. Emotional landscapes are not static, they are continually reshaped by our experiences, both past and present. Re-engaging with a former connection challenges us to evaluate whether old patterns of behavior, either our own or those learned in past relationships, still hold sway. This reflection can be profoundly educational, teaching us to distinguish between habitual reactions and intentional responses. It is a moment where emotional intelligence is not theoretical but practical, lived in real time. Furthermore, re-encounters with past relationships can illuminate lingering biases and unresolved narratives we may carry. Perhaps we still unconsciously measure new experiences against the past, expecting the same disappointments or joys. Perhaps we fear repeating mistakes we made long ago, or we struggle to forgive ourselves for choices we regret. By confronting these aspects head-on, we can disentangle the present from the past. We learn that emotional healing is not about erasing memories but about reshaping their influence. It is about reclaiming agency over our responses, understanding that while past experiences inform us, they do not dictate our present emotional well-being. Another critical layer involves empathy. Seeing the evolution of someone from our past, or even recognizing the struggles they face, invites a broader understanding of human complexity. We begin to see that people are not static. We are all evolving beings whose experiences continuously shape our behaviors and beliefs. This realization encourages a more compassionate stance not only toward others but also toward ourselves. It teaches us that holding on to resentment or regret is less about justice and more about our own emotional baggage. By allowing ourselves to reflect on past relationships without judgment, we cultivate emotional maturity and deepen our capacity for authentic connection in all areas of life. Importantly, these reflections can also serve as a guide for future relationships. The lessons embedded in past experiences about communication, boundaries, trust, and vulnerability become tools for more informed and conscious interactions. When we see how we once reacted, what hurt us, and what brought us joy, we gain a template for how to navigate similar challenges moving forward. It is an educational process, one that does not rely solely on intellectual understanding but on lived experience. By engaging with the emotional echoes of the past, we become more attuned to our needs and more mindful of our impact on others. This process of reflection is enhanced when paired with self-inquiry and intentional emotional work. Journaling, therapy, meditation, and reflective dialogue allow us to process what resurfaces when the past reappears. Each memory, each emotional response is data about our inner world. By systematically observing and analyzing these responses, we deepen our understanding of our emotional landscape. This is not about dwelling in the past. It is about extracting actionable insights that shape our present and future. The lessons are often subtle, noticing triggers, understanding patterns, and recognizing unresolved emotional threads that still require attention. It is also essential to recognize that revisiting past relationships can evoke a heightened sense of mortality and impermanence. Life is unpredictable, and the trajectories of individuals diverge in unexpected ways. When confronted with someone from our past, we are reminded of the fragility of circumstance, the unpredictability of human experience, and the urgency of living authentically. This awareness can be deeply motivating, encouraging us to prioritize meaningful connections, express gratitude, and act with integrity. It underscores the truth that emotional growth is inseparable from conscious engagement with life itself. Finally, encountering a person from our past is a reminder that emotional healing is not linear. We may feel progress in one moment and regression in another. Recollections, unresolved feelings, and new insights can converge to produce complex emotional responses. This is entirely normal and, in fact, necessary for deep healing. The goal is not to achieve perfection, but to cultivate awareness, resilience, and adaptability. By observing how past experiences shape present emotions, we develop a nuanced understanding of our emotional landscape, one that allows us to navigate the complexities of human relationships with greater skill and empathy. In summary, the return of someone from our past is an invitation to explore the layers of our emotional development. It highlights the ways in which former connections continue to influence us, challenges us to reflect on our growth, and provides a framework for continued healing. It emphasizes the importance of self-awareness, compassion, and intentionality in managing the emotional legacies that shape our lives. By engaging with these encounters thoughtfully, we can transform them from triggers of pain into opportunities for learning, growth, and deeper emotional intelligence. The past is never truly gone. It exists in the threads that weave the fabric of who we are today, teaching us that emotional maturity is cultivated through reflection, courage, and the willingness to learn from every experience. Past relationships shape our present emotional landscape in ways that are often subtle yet profound. They influence not only how we respond to people today, but also the underlying frameworks through which we interpret human behavior, connection, and intimacy. While we may consciously believe that a relationship has ended, the emotional imprints remain, quietly guiding choices, reactions, and even subconscious expectations. The brain itself records these experiences in neural pathways that affect perception, trust, and emotional regulation. Psychological research confirms that early relational experiences, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, create patterns that can persist for decades if left unexamined. Thus, encountering someone from our past acts as both a mirror and a test, revealing how much of our emotional growth is authentic and how much is still influenced by old imprints. Consider, for example, the phenomenon of emotional triggers. When we see someone from our past, certain words, gestures, or even physical appearances can elicit strong reactions that feel disproportionate to the present moment. These triggers are not merely nostalgic, they are the residual echoes of unresolved emotional experiences. They might manifest as anger, sadness, longing, or even guilt. Recognizing these triggers requires self-awareness and introspection. It is a call to differentiate between present reality and past influence, teaching us to respond intentionally rather than react impulsively. Over time, this conscious differentiation strengthens emotional resilience and enables healthier interactions in the present. The educational value of these encounters extends to understanding relational patterns. Every relationship teaches lessons about communication, boundaries, and emotional expression. Revisiting someone from our past often illuminates recurring themes that we may not have noticed at the time. Perhaps there was a pattern of conflict avoidance, or maybe there was a tendency toward overdependence or mistrust. Observing these patterns retrospectively allows us to recognize not only personal habits but also relational dynamics that may have shaped multiple connections. By studying these patterns, we gain insight into our own behavior, equipping ourselves with tools to improve future interactions and create relationships that are more balanced, respectful, and fulfilling. Emotional intelligence is another area deeply influenced by past experiences. Every interaction, especially those that ended with unresolved tension or unspoken feelings, contributes to our capacity for empathy, patience, and perspective-taking. When we encounter someone from our past, it is a chance to apply these skills in real time. How do we respond to vulnerability? How do we navigate discomfort without defensiveness? How do we integrate lessons learned into compassionate action? These questions are not rhetorical. They are practical exercises in emotional literacy. Developing this skill is essential, not just for romantic relationships, but for professional environments, friendships, and family interactions. Furthermore, encountering a past relationship can illuminate unresolved grief and the necessity of emotional closure. Many people carry unprocessed emotions from previous relationships, whether the separation was abrupt, mutual, or complicated by circumstances beyond control. These unprocessed emotions can manifest as anxiety, self-doubt, or repeated patterns in future connections. By facing these emotions consciously, we create opportunities for healing and closure. Emotional closure is not about erasing memory or negating past experiences. It is about acknowledging the full scope of one's feelings, understanding their origin, and integrating them into a coherent emotional narrative that supports growth rather than hinders it. The educational perspective also includes the role of forgiveness in emotional development. Forgiveness, both of others and of ourselves, is a cornerstone of maturity. Encounters with the past highlight the areas where forgiveness may still be needed. This process does not require reconciliation or rekindling a relationship. Rather, it is about releasing the hold that negative emotions exert over our present. Research in positive psychology consistently shows that practicing forgiveness correlates with reduced stress, improved mental health, and enhanced social connections. By consciously choosing forgiveness, we not only free ourselves from emotional burden, but also strengthen our capacity for empathy and understanding. Another dimension to explore is the impact of these encounters on self-concept and identity. Relationships shape our perception of self, influencing self-esteem, confidence, and personal values. When we see someone from our past, it can challenge or affirm our current sense of identity. We may recognize how much we have changed, how our priorities have evolved, or how past experiences helped shape the person we are today. This reflective process fosters self-awareness and clarity about personal goals, boundaries, and aspirations. By understanding the ways in which past relationships have contributed to our current identity, we are better equipped to navigate life with intentionality and authenticity. The interaction with past experiences also provides lessons in resilience. Life rarely unfolds in predictable ways, and relationships often end in disappointment, conflict, or unmet expectations. Encountering these remnants from the past teaches adaptability, the ability to face emotional discomfort, accept uncertainty, and continue forward without allowing past experiences to dictate future happiness. Resilience is cultivated not by avoiding emotional pain, but by engaging with it thoughtfully, learning from it, and using it as a catalyst for growth. This process equips us with the strength to approach new relationships, challenges, and life circumstances with confidence and composure. A significant educational insight arises from observing the trajectory of someone else's growth. Re-encountering a person from the past allows for a comparison of emotional evolution, reminding us that personal development is ongoing and dynamic. This recognition fosters humility and patience as we understand that growth is non-linear. Each person's journey is unique, and each encounter provides lessons in acceptance, perspective, and understanding. We learn to appreciate change in ourselves and in others, realizing that empathy often requires recognizing the complexity of human experience over time. Practical strategies can be derived from these insights. Mindfulness and reflection become essential tools when processing encounters with past relationships. Engaging in journaling or guided self-inquiry allows us to articulate our feelings, dissect triggers, and explore relational patterns. Therapy or coaching can provide structured frameworks for understanding how past experiences shape present emotional responses. Meditation and contemplative practices cultivate emotional regulation, helping us respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. These strategies transform encounters with the past from emotionally charged events into structured opportunities for education and growth. Moreover, these experiences reinforce the importance of intentional communication. Even if the past relationship cannot or should not be revisited, clarity in how we communicate with ourselves and others is essential. Articulating emotional needs, recognizing boundaries, and expressing empathy are skills that can be honed through reflection on past interactions. This practical application ensures that lessons from prior experiences translate into meaningful improvements in emotional and relational literacy. Cultural and societal perspectives also influence how we interpret past relationships. Societal narratives often place emphasis on closure, moving on, or measuring success by the ability to forget the past. However, educationally, it is more accurate to view the past as a resource rather than a burden. Anthropological and psychological studies highlight that human beings are narrative-driven. We make sense of our lives through stories, and past relationships are integral chapters in these narratives. Recognizing this allows us to approach former connections with curiosity and insight rather than shame or avoidance. Finally, the overarching lesson is that emotional landscapes are cumulative. Each relationship, each encounter, each memory contributes to a layered understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Past relationships are not isolated events, they are threads woven into the complex fabric of human experience. By consciously reflecting on these threads, we cultivate a holistic understanding of our emotional lives. This awareness is not theoretical, it is deeply practical, informing choices, relationships, and personal growth in tangible ways. Emotional intelligence, empathy, resilience, and self-awareness all emerge from this reflective process, underscoring the educational value of revisiting the past thoughtfully and deliberately. In essence, the past never truly leaves us. It informs, challenges, and educates. When we allow ourselves to reflect on its influence, we gain the tools to navigate the present with clarity, compassion, and conscious intention. Encounters with someone from the past illuminate the ways we have grown, the lessons we still need to learn, and the emotional maturity we continue to cultivate. They remind us that our emotional lives are complex, evolving, and shaped by every connection we have ever formed. Embracing this perspective transforms moments of reflection into powerful opportunities for self-discovery, growth, and deeper understanding of the intricate landscape of human emotion. Helping others can become a lesson in self-awareness. At first glance, supporting someone who is struggling may appear as a purely altruistic act, focused outward on their needs, challenges, or vulnerabilities. Yet, the process of offering help is just as much an inward journey. Each act of compassion serves as a mirror, reflecting our own strengths, weaknesses, and patterns of thought and behavior. The very act of giving exposes us to our internal landscape in ways that are subtle but profound, teaching us about the depth of our empathy, the scope of our resilience, and the areas where personal growth is still needed. Helping others is rarely a neutral experience. It engages the mind and heart in complex ways, making it a powerful exercise in self-awareness. When we encounter someone in need, the first step often involves noticing and acknowledging their pain. This requires us to pause, to observe without immediate judgment, and to listen actively. In doing so, we learn about our capacity for presence, the ability to be fully attuned to someone else without letting our own internal chatter dominate. For many people, this is a skill that requires conscious cultivation. It is easy to fall into habitual reactions, offering advice too quickly, projecting our own solutions, or minimizing the other person's experience because it does not align with our perspective. Awareness of these tendencies is the first layer of learning that helping others provides. Through careful observation, we recognize not only the needs of others, but also the habitual patterns in ourselves that influence how we respond. Supporting someone who is struggling also highlights the boundaries between empathy and over-identification. There is a difference between being fully present and allowing ourselves to be overwhelmed by another person's suffering. Self-awareness emerges when we notice these boundaries and consciously navigate them. For instance, offering emotional support to someone may trigger unresolved emotions from our own past, memories of grief, disappointment, or neglect. These triggers are not coincidences. They are signals of areas within us that require attention. By recognizing them, we learn to separate our own emotional baggage from the needs of the person we are helping. This skill is critical because it allows us to maintain clarity and effectiveness in our support while deepening our understanding of our emotional makeup. Moreover, helping others often reveals latent strengths we may not have recognized in ourselves. It is easy to underestimate the capacity we have to offer patience, insight, or compassion until a situation demands it. When someone relies on our guidance or presence, we are confronted with choices about how we engage, whether to act from fear, insecurity, or a desire for control, or whether to act from authenticity, understanding, and generosity. Each decision provides a lesson in self-awareness. It exposes the parts of us that are resilient, resourceful, or capable of profound kindness. Simultaneously, it highlights areas where growth is needed, whether in managing frustration, overcoming bias, or cultivating patience. These realizations form a continuous feedback loop where each act of helping becomes a lens through which we examine our own character. Psychological research underscores the deep connection between altruism and self-reflection. Studies have shown that acts of helping and volunteering not only improve the well-being of recipients, but also enhance self-esteem, emotional intelligence, and personal insight for the giver. When we assist someone in navigating difficulty, our brains engage in processes that heighten empathy, problem-solving abilities, and perspective-taking. The act of understanding another person's perspective illuminates our own internal narratives, assumptions, and values. This dual benefit, supporting others while learning about ourselves, demonstrates that compassion is both outwardly generative and inwardly educative. Helping others is in essence a practical classroom in which the curriculum is our own self-understanding. Another critical dimension is humility. When we encounter individuals facing struggles, we are reminded of the shared vulnerability inherent in the human experience. Everyone has weaknesses, insecurities, or challenges, regardless of outward appearances. Recognizing this truth fosters humility by showing us that no one is immune to hardship, including ourselves. Helping someone navigate difficulty reinforces the interconnectedness of human experience and reminds us that compassion is a skill to cultivate continuously. Through humility, we learn to temper judgment, to replace assumptions with curiosity, and to approach relationships with a spirit of openness and patience. Helping others also serves as a test of authenticity. Our intentions in offering support can range from genuine care to unconscious desires for validation, control, or moral superiority. Self-awareness is developed when we reflect on why we help. Are we motivated by authentic concern or by a need to feel good about ourselves? Are we offering guidance or imposing our own solutions? These reflections are critical because they reveal the alignment or misalignment between our actions and our values. In doing so, we learn to cultivate integrity in our interactions, ensuring that our compassion is both ethical and effective. Through repeated practice, these insights refine not only how we support others but also how we understand ourselves. The act of helping can also uncover our emotional triggers and limitations. Some situations may evoke discomfort, impatience, or even aversion. These reactions are valuable data about our emotional landscape. For example, a person may feel anxious or frustrated when assisting someone struggling with habits or choices that mirror their own past mistakes. These moments offer opportunities for self-inquiry. Why do certain situations provoke such strong reactions? What fears, unresolved pain, or biases are at play? By examining these questions, we gain insight into the underlying structures of our emotional life. Helping others thus functions as both mirror and magnifying glass, reflecting existing patterns while enlarging our understanding of them. Moreover, helping someone struggling often strengthens our awareness of interdependence. While the act of giving may feel unilateral, it frequently illuminates mutuality in human relationships. Those we support often teach us resilience, patience, and perspective. Their struggles can illuminate hidden facets of our character, revealing strength in the face of uncertainty, or empathy where we might not have noticed it before. In this sense, helping is not a one-way street, but a dialogue between two human experiences, each influencing and informing the other. By recognizing this interdependence, we become more attuned to the dynamics of connection, cooperation, and mutual support, which are foundational to both personal growth and societal cohesion. Self-awareness gained through helping also extends to recognizing the limits of our control. While we can offer guidance, encouragement, and support, we cannot force transformation or change. Accepting this limitation is a lesson in patience and humility, teaching us to focus on influence rather than control. By acknowledging that each individual's journey is unique and that outcomes cannot always align with our expectations, we learn to practice detachment without disengagement. This balance, being present, supportive, and compassionate while maintaining emotional boundaries, strengthens resilience and emotional intelligence. Helping others can also illuminate the importance of emotional literacy. Engaging deeply with another person's struggles requires the ability to name, interpret, and respond appropriately to a range of emotions. In doing so, we often discover our own emotional strengths and gaps. For instance, the capacity to remain calm under pressure, to validate someone's feelings without judgment, or to offer constructive support reflects both learned skills and natural tendencies. Conversely, noticing moments of discomfort, frustration, or inadequacy highlights areas for growth. This ongoing feedback loop enhances self-awareness by providing clear, situationally grounded information about how we experience and manage emotions in real time. Another valuable dimension is perspective taking. Supporting someone in difficulty forces us to step outside our own subjective experience and consider life through a different lens. This process teaches empathy, patience, and flexibility. It challenges assumptions, biases, and preconceived notions about human behavior. By understanding another person's experience, we not only help them navigate their challenges but also expand our own cognitive and emotional frameworks. This expansion is a hallmark of self-awareness, recognizing that the world is richer, more complex, and less predictable than our individual perspectives alone might suggest. Helping others is also a vehicle for cultivating gratitude. Observing the struggles of another person often brings clarity to our own circumstances. We may recognize privileges, opportunities, or emotional strengths we take for granted. This awareness does not diminish the other person's experience, rather, it enhances our understanding of the relative complexity of life and deepens our appreciation for what we have. Gratitude, in turn, reinforces emotional resilience, reduces stress, and fosters a positive mindset. By helping others, we gain both perspective and appreciation for our own journey, strengthening self-awareness and emotional maturity simultaneously. Additionally, supporting someone struggling can reveal our decision-making processes under emotional pressure. How we choose to respond, whether with immediate intervention, measured reflection, or patience, reflects core aspects of our character. These choices illuminate tendencies such as impulsivity, overthinking, caution, or adaptability. By observing and analyzing our responses, we develop a deeper understanding of how we operate emotionally and psychologically. This self-knowledge is invaluable because it informs future decisions, relationships, and personal growth trajectories. Over time, repeated acts of helping cultivate what psychologists call reflective capacity, the ability to observe oneself, recognize patterns, and adapt behaviors accordingly. Each act of compassion, no matter how small, reinforces neural pathways associated with empathy, patience, and insight. Over months and years, these repeated experiences create a habit of reflective thinking that enhances both personal and interpersonal functioning. This long-term process demonstrates that self-awareness is not a static trait, but a dynamic skill that grows through intentional action and sustained practice. In conclusion, helping others is far more than an altruistic endeavor. Each act of support functions as an educational tool, illuminating the depths of our emotional lives, revealing latent strengths, uncovering vulnerabilities, and providing continuous feedback on our patterns, values, and capabilities. By engaging with the struggles of others thoughtfully and compassionately, we develop skills in empathy, resilience, emotional regulation, and perspective taking. We learn to navigate boundaries, recognize our own limitations, and cultivate humility. Helping becomes a mirror reflecting who we are, a lens magnifying our tendencies, and a classroom in which the curriculum is the study of the self. In essence, offering compassion is simultaneously a gift to others and a profound lesson in self-awareness, teaching us not only how to connect with humanity, but also how to connect more deeply with ourselves.